Takeda Keiji meets his colleagues who greet him nicely, but also make fun of his dating life. A mysterious man named Echo struggles through the crowd, and then Miyashita Toka helps him out while berating the others for being uncivilized. Takeda makes his way to school and learns that Miyashita has not come yet. Later, he spots his girlfriend from the rooftop and rushes to meet her. Surprisingly, she claims to be Boogie Pop, who is her split personality Grim Reaper. Takeda is confused, but figures he's telling the truth because Miyashita doesn't remember anything the next day. Takeda meets Boogie Pop once more, and he claims that he is an automatic being. Takeda studies about multiple personality disorder and asks Boogie Pop if he can fix him. However, he states that his mission is to stop a man-eating monster named Manticor who is living inside a student. Rumors start to spread all over the school, and Suema Kazuko takes a key interest in these occurrences. Kirimanagi is expected to be a prime suspect as her best friend Naoko Kamikishiro goes missing. The next day, Takeda meets Boogie Pop, who says that the monster has been killed, so it's time for him to leave. Takeda doesn't want him to go, so Boogie Pop declares that he is his first true friend. Now Takeda finally gets with Miyashita, but they bump into Nagi and Nichiko Kei, who calls them out for showing PDA in school. Now he sees Suema walking home with Kyoko Kinoshita, but they are suddenly attacked by Nagi, who suspects Kyoko to be the Manticor. However, the monster is busy eating a student named Minako Yurihara, and he takes her form. He also greets a boy named Masami Saotome, who is his assistant. Now Kyoko and Suema have a chat about a missing student named Akiko Kusatsu, who had mentioned a strange drug. Suema visits Nagi's home, and here we learn that Nagi is hunting the Manticore because she has a messiah complex. A flashback shows how Saotome met the Manticore the first time and offered to help him to take over the world. In order to do this, he brings girls to Manticore who makes them distribute Towa drugs so that he can make more slaves. Nagi inspects the disappearance of Akiko, and then we learn that Echoes is actually an alien being. A flashback shows us that he was found by Naoko, who seemed to have a telepathic connection with him. She had taken Echoes to Nagi so that he could tell her that Manticore is his clone. Unfortunately, Naoko bumps into the monster and mentions Echoes, so she is killed by the beast immediately. Now we see Boogie Pop, who talks to a boy named Shiro. He goes around school asking for Naoko, and then he is joined by Saotome and Kei. They decide to use the PA system to look for Nagi while she is actually with Echoes, planning her next move. The duo meets the search party, but then Saotome uses his chance to kill Nagi, and then he attacks Echoes with a poisonous pen. Manticore arrives to the scene and fights with her original form, while Saotome attacks Kei. An intense sequence follows, but the poison weakens Echoes, so he loses to his clone. Manticore decides to take Nagi's form as she will make for a great disguise. However, Echoes cannot allow this to happen, so he transforms into a beam of light and kills Saotome, after which Manticore goes crazy. The beast is about to kill Kei, but then Boogie Pop arrives and traps Manticore with his wires. That's when Shiro arrives and kills the monster with his arrow. Now, we learn that Echoes had given some of his life to Nagi, so she is successfully revived. After that, Kei is told that Echoes was sent to Earth to pass judgment on humanity, and it was Naoko who convinced him that humans deserve to live. Now Nagi and Kei meet Takeda and Miyashita, thus proving that all of this was a flashback. At night, Boogie Pop meets Suiko Minahoshi, who is believed to be an imaginator. She jumps off the building and takes her life, but fragments of her soul still remain in the world. In a brief flashback, Asukai Jin counsels a girl who talks about feeling a monster in her dreams. He is shown to have the power to see what's in people's hearts, in the form of roses. Later, he spots Suiko jumping off the building and is the only one who is able to see her soul. The Imaginator states that she is the world's enemy and vanishes after that. The professor comes back to his cousin and is unable to see her soul's bud, after which she is revealed to be possessed by Suiko. The villain shows Asukai a disturbing vision of his destiny, and it makes him go crazy. He attacks Suiko, but then she turns back to his cousin. The next night, Asukai is attacked by his student Imazaki, who asks him for drugs, but then she reveals herself to be Suiko in disguise. The Imaginator taunts him, after which she slits her own throat and dies in Asukai's arms. He loses his mind and finally becomes an imaginator, after which he saves a couple from some goons. Suiko's friend Komiya is about to commit suicide, but then Boogiepop stops her by saying that Suiko still hasn't crossed over to the next world. Now we see Orihata Aya and Masaki Taniguchi, who are in a relationship. We take a look at their past and learn that Masaki is actually Nagi's adopted brother. One day, Masaki is bullied by some students and he tries to defend himself but gets cornered. That's when Aya comes to save him, and we learn that this is a flashback to when Asukai had come to save them. The Imaginator tells Masaki to take care of Aya as she is not as calm as she seems. This incident leads to them start dating each other, and then we see them waiting in line for the aquarium. Aya is shown to be very insecure and skeptical, but Masaki tries to break through her mystery. He also pushes her to gain admission into Shinyo School, and they seem happy together. However, a bully named Ano Shinjiro starts to hate Masaki because he is very popular with the girls. Ano decides to spy on Aya and notices her talking to someone, but she's just trying to convince herself not to fall in love with Masaki. That's when a synthetic human named Spooky E arrives and turns him into a terminal, thus robbing him of all emotions. Later, Ano receives a love letter and informs Spooky E about it, but he simply erases his memories. Now Asukai meets Ano and understands that he is a slave of the Towa organization. The hypnotized boy attacks Asukai, but he uses his powers to snap him out of his spell. Later, Ano meets with his mystery girl, but it turns out to be Spooky E in disguise. Luckily, Boogiepop shows up to save Ano and is about to attack the villain, but he makes his escape. Boogiepop gives Ano the real love letter, and he finally decides to act on it. The next day, Spooky E meets Aya and calls her Camille. He rebukes her for not completing her mission, but then Masaki comes to the rescue. He puts up a decent fight, but Spooky E uses his electric powers to defeat him and erase his memories. Masaki wakes up next to Aya, who asks him about Boogiepop, as she needs to gather intel. Now, Kinukua Kotoe meets Suema and asks for some help with Asukai, who is revealed to be her cousin. Suema decides to conduct an investigation into Asukai's recent behavior and finds a painting of Suiko in his room. However, she has to hide when Asukai enters with a couple of girls and turns them into his slaves. The next day, Suema finds Aya on the rooftop, and she fears that she is going to commit suicide. Suema tries to convince her not to do this, and then Aya asks her about Boogiepop. Suema says that Aya should focus on the pleasures of life, as she expresses her frustration of not being able to reveal her true feelings for Misaki. Aya worries that her crush will eventually end up hating her, but Suema states that to live is to risk being hated. Aya gets inspired by the speech and decides to ask Masaki to become Boogiepop. Later, she steals some drugs from a bunch of drug dealers and uses Masaki to defeat them in his Boogiepop disguise. Time passes by, and the couple continues with their antics, but Aya feels guilty for making Masaki do whatever she wants. However, he acts sweet with her, and she starts to fall in love with him. Unfortunately, Spooky E calls Aya and tells her to cut ties with Masaki as he is not finding the right targets through this plan. Now, Kinukua thinks back to the time she fell in love with Asukai, who was a master artist right from the start. We learned that they became cousins after Asukai's uncle had died from the Towa drug, thus causing Kinukua's family to adopt him. Unfortunately, Spooky E cuts the nostalgia and knocks her down so that he can turn her into his slave. Kinukua becomes a terminal and starts interrogating a club owner about Asukai. She gathers some evidence and goes to Aya. Later, Masaki is confronted by Nagi, who suspects him to be up to no good. Then he goes to meet Aya, but finds Kinukua there and is questioned endlessly. Masaki doesn't like her behavior, but Aya maintains that Kinukua is her friend. We learned that the terminal had instructed Aya to breed with Masaki, as she is a synthetic human, but she is against it as she truly loves him. Now Masaki says that he will continue being Boogiepop and walks away angrily. That's when Spooky E arrives and knocks out Aya after saying he is going to kill Masaki to spread the message that Boogiepop is dead. Suema crosses one of Asukai's slaves and worries about what's going to happen. She meets the professor and asks him about Kinukua, who is acting odd. Asukai admits he knew she had a crush on him, but he brushes aside Suema's concerns as he cannot see a bud in her heart. She confronts him, and then the imaginator reveals that he is looking for the right girl with a balanced seed so that he can change the world with his powers. He tries to get Suema over to his side, but she says that she trusts Boogie Pop to do the right thing. Then Asukai has a chat with Suiko and figures that he must take care of Spooky E. Meanwhile, Kinokua and her goons attack Masaki, but he turns into Boogie Pop and defeats them all. He tries to get answers from Kinokua, but then Nagi knocks him down. He acts fast and makes an escape, after which Nagi defeats Kinokua's remaining goons and knocks down the terminal. Kinokua wakes up in front of Asukai, whom she finally recognizes as her crush. He cures her condition and then she breaks down into tears. Spooky E grows frustrated with his progress, and then he is confronted by Asukai for his drug operation. He shows off his powers by freezing Spooky E, and then he takes away his soul stamp. The villain warns Asukai against Boogie Pop, and then he shocks himself. Now, the professor finds Aya tied up and notices Masaki calling her, so he gets an idea. The fake Boogie Pop learns that Kinokua was brainwashed and tells Aya everything. However, Asukai forces her to cut ties with him, despite Masaki declaring his love for her. He realizes that someone else is with Aya and follows the clues to save his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Suema talks to Kinokua, who has come back to her senses. She confesses that she still has feelings for Asukai, and then Suema heads off to a park that Kinokua mentions. Asukai prepares to take Aya's heart as he believes it will be perfect for his seed. However, Masaki reaches the scene, so Asukai instructs his slaves to attack him in circus costumes. He struggles against them and is about to be drugged, but then the real Boogie Pop arrives to save Masaki from his attackers. He tells him that he was brainwashed by Spooky E, and then the Grim Reaper goes to Asukai for a fight. Here, the Imaginator learns that Aya is not a human, and all his efforts have gone to waste. He goes crazy, and then Suiko arrives to push him off the tower. Boogie Pop saves him as he is no longer a threat. Then Suiko commends Masaki for his actions before crossing over. Now Suema comes to the scene and calls for help so that the students can be treated. Aya is finally reunited with her boyfriend, and they can finally declare their love to each other. Now we see Echoes in an alien world where he meets Boogie Pop. He tells him a story about the Towa scarecrow, Kuroda, and we are taken to a flashback where the detective talks to his assistant Pigeon about a man named Teratsuki. The Towa organization wants their scarecrow to do some research on Teratsuki, as his ice cream company has made a suspicious donation to a hospital. Kuroda checks out the venue and bumps into Nagi over there. She strikes a conversation with him and states that she has an inexplicable pain, so Kuroda gives her some flowers. After concluding that Teratsuki is innocent, he risks his life to steal the Towa drug to save Nagi. Then he meets her in the hospital, where they get into an intense discussion. Nagi decides that she wants to become friends with him, but then an assassin named Masanori Sasaki is hired by the Towa organization to kill Kuroda. At night, Sasaki attacks the scarecrow, but he manages to escape after saving Nagi with the Towa drug. However, Kuroda has been brutally injured and is about to die. That's when he meets Boogie Pop and has a chat with him before falling to the ground and dying. Now we see Dr. Kisugi, who works as a psychiatrist in the hospital. After a chat with one of her patients, she meets Nagi, who has miraculously recovered. Kisugi is amazed to see this, so she becomes obsessed with creating an evolution drug. She conducts illegal experiments to test its regeneration abilities and thinks of starting on human subjects. That's when mysterious murders start happening all over the city. The killer is suspected to be in the medical field, as all the victims are missing their skulls. And then Kisugi taunts her colleague as she likes to strike fear into people's hearts. She takes it a step further at night when she meets a patient and scares him by showing off her regeneration powers. After toying around with the victim, Kisugi decides that she wants more fear. However, she must also find someone to frame for the recent murders, so she gets to work. The next day, Kisugi meets Miyashita, whose mother fears that there's a mystery man dwelling inside her. The villain gets interested and tries hypnotherapy on Miyashita. That's when Boogie Pop shows himself and states that Kisugi is an enemy of the world. They get into a detailed discussion and keep debating for a while, but then Boogie Pop states that he will stop her if she continues with her ways. In a flashback, we see Nagi's dad Seichi, who receives a letter from a mysterious man who claims to have the power to heal people, but also states that he will die soon because of this. Seichi's friend Gen reveals that the man actually died right after sending the letter. and that's when Seiichi realizes that he's next. We learn that his wife is leaving him for another man, but Nagi reassures him that she will stay with him. Later, Seiichi meets Suiko and tells her that he will die soon, and they talk about humanity. After a brief chat, Seiichi identifies her to be a reaper and says that he wishes for his novels to become popular. He is killed by Sasaki at night, but convinces him to spare Nagi. The next day, Pigeon orders Sasaki to investigate the recent murders, so he gets to work. He meets Nagi in the middle of his mission, and she offers to help him out with the investigation. Kisugi spies on them from her car, and then the duo interviews Rika, who is a friend of the most recent victim, Shizue. Rika states that Shizue could be scared very easily, and then Nagi connects the dots to learn that Kisugi is the killer. She immediately leaves to confront the Mad Doctor, while Sasaki suspects something fishy. And that's the end of part 1. Like, share, and subscribe if you want to see part 2 ASAP. Hit the bell icon for regular updates too. I'll see you soon.